And item number 2 on the agenda today is more transmission fun. We're putting this guy in that guy. Well, we gotta take the old one out first, which is a pain. What? Alright then. And now we need to go up with it so I can start unbuckling everything. I just disconnected the battery, and that is all we really need to do up top. And everything else is handled from underneath. Yep, that's what we got going on today. And up we go. Stop, go check clearance everywhere, just to be safe. Alright, clear down this line, clear up front, clear in the back, clear down this line, up we go. Clicky click. To pull the transmission from a P71 Police Interceptor Ford Crown Vic, first thing you got to do is pull the 4 bolts to the rear of the drive shaft loose, and then slide your drive shaft out. That is step 1. And then what you're going to have to do is pull those 2 right there loose to disconnect your exhaust from here. And then there's 2 bolts. There's one right there and one right there that you got to disconnect to get that guy out of the way, just to make a little bit of clearance. And you can get it out without having to remove the passenger side. Once that is out of the way, you do have to disconnect these 2 bolts here to drop that so that this will slide back. And then that is step 3, is to get this guy out of the way, support your transmission, remove your starter, take your inspection plate, well, this one doesn't really, yeah, it does, it's got the little inspection plate there, off, so that you can get to your torque converter bolts. Take those loose, and then once you get your return line, your cooler lines right there busted loose and removed, get your 4 or 5, depending on which transmission you have, electrical connectors loose. Take your transmission to back of the engine bolts loose, and that's it. It comes out. Well, one more thing, I'm sorry. These 2 bolts right here, that one and that one, you can pull those loose instead of having to fight with the clamp, and just pull the bracket loose, and then take your shifter connector loose from the mechanism there, and then that's loose. Well, we'll get started on step 1. Alright, for these you're going to need a 12 millimeter 12-point box end and a cheater. There's a nice little crescent wrench there, and then bust them loose. You want to make sure that you are in park and your parking brake is set before you bust these loose. Alright, also, this would be a good time before you start breaking everything else loose, is right in there where your cross member slides up into the frame. Spray up in there real good with some penetrating fluid on both sides, because that likes to basically seize closed and rust together, and it becomes a pain in the butt to get out of there. I mean, it's pressed in as it is, pretty tight, and the rust just makes it that much worse. So spray that down real good. Once you got all your bolts out of your drive shaft to differential yoke, just give that guy a couple little love taps on the iron, not on the aluminum, on the iron, with a little hammer or pretty good sized wrench, whatever, to loosen it up. You might got to give it a couple of taps on both sides, high side and low side, to get it to pop loose, and just knock on it a little bit tap it, tap it, tap it. Don't beat on it, and it will break free and you can pull it off of there. All right, once you tapped it off of there, you see where right around that ring is basically what was holding it in. Down there, and you just want to pull straight out, and then it'll come right under here to pull it out from under the car. All right, get your starter bolts out. They are really tight, so you got to bust them loose. 3 of them, and then there's a nice little spot you can tuck your starter in without having to pull your wires loose, since you have already disconnected your battery up top. And just bam, that's out of the way. And then a lot of people complain they can't get a ratchet up in here to get these torque converter nuts loose. I have no problem getting a 1/4-inch ratchet with a shorty 14mm 6-point, and you just kind of tuck it right like that, and then stick it up, and it goes right on. Yeah, if I can do it left-handed there we go, no problem. Alright, once again in my true, hold on, let me wipe this stupid lens off. And again, in true wizard fashion, did a bunch of stuff and didn't record nothing. I've got the shifter linkage cable removed. I've got the driver's side exhaust linkage removed from the manifold to the Y pipe back there. We've got our 4 bolts for the cross member out. We've got our 2 nuts loose from the bottom of the cross member. We've got our drive shaft out. We've got our starter out of the way. We've got our transmission cooler lines disconnected and out of the way. And we've got our transmission jack under the transmission so we can support its weight once we get this cross member loose and out of there. And that's where we're at. All right, to get this cross member out, you are going to need some serious coaxing even after hitting the rusted spot. See where it's starting to break loose there with the penetrating fluid. I've given up with pry bars, so I can't get a good bite on it, and I've switched to the heaviest, dutiest slide hammer with a hook end on it I could find, and this is actually pulling it. See if I can catch it on camera here without jacking up my shot. And cross member removed, because the name of this game is I Win. And our transmission is supported by the transmission jack. You can lower it down another couple of RCHs and get the transmission bolts out, and that's it, it's loose. Alright, bad tranny is out. And like I said, we were already there. We just had to pull the last 7 transmission mounting bolts, and I didn't have a swivel yesterday, so I went and grabbed a swivel, knocked them out, dropped the transmission, and it is over there on the ground. Got the new one loaded up on the transmission jack and about to slide her up under the car. Alright, we've got her under the car, staged up, car lowered back down, and we're gonna go ahead and stab it in. Alrighty. Again, absolutely horrible videographer, and you catch some of the aftermath here. Yeah, it takes quite a bit of different tools and whatnot to make these things do what you need them to do, but we got the new transmission in, and it is just the exact opposite procedure of taking it out. So if you got it out, you can put it in. Just do the same thing, only backwards. But that's pretty much it. We got to bolt the exhaust back up, bolt the drive shaft back in, and put some fluids in it, and it'll be done. All right, down to the final little touches on this transmission swap. The last steps are to pull these lines back off so that I can flush the cooler. So I completely forgot to do that yesterday. And then pull this pan and clean it all out, change the filter, and put it on back on with a fresh gasket, and then commence the soft flush of the transmission, whatever old fluid might still be in it, with new fluid. And then once it's kind of running clear, we button her all back up and do a full charge of transmission fluid, and that should be it. It'll be done. Now, first thing I like to do before I pull a transmission pan on a good transmission anyway is clean the crap out of it off of anywhere you might get some dirt up in it. Just, I mean, gravity is going to cause stuff to go downward, so it's not typically going to go bloop up into your valve bodies and whatnot, but just to mitigate the possibility, I blasted off with some brake parts cleaner just to knock any of the loose bits off. Aids in cleaning the outside, just loosen the grease and the grime and the dirt up. Tar. These things can get nasty. You got an oil leak or something at the engine, I mean, it's going to come down and then it's going to go back. So your transmission typically gets pretty coated in some gook. Alright, let that drip and dry off a little bit, and then we're going to pull the pan. See what kind of what we find in there. Alright, pan is all cleaned out now. Clean all the stuff off the magnet. And we're about to put the new transmission filter in. You see that orange thing right there on the input of the filter? That's a seal. Make sure when you pull the old one out, that comes off with it. And if it don't, you reach up in there and grab it, pull it out before you install that, or you just destroyed your new transmission or your current transmission if all you're doing is fluid service. Make damn sure you get that out of there before you put the new one in, into that hole right there. Right, so we got our filter and pan with new gasket reinstalled, and then pulled the cooler lines to do our cooler flush. And I like to use Cooler Clean. 1 can of it is plenty for one of these Crown Vics. And I like to use the top one as the return and the bottom one as the feed, and it just pushes all that fluid up through the cooler and then out, and then have it draining into a bucket. And I kind of loop it up around the handle with this particular piece of hose so I can see out the end. Once it turns clear, you know you've got all the fluid out, and then just run the can out. Just run a whole damn can through that cooler. And then what you do is you're going to hook up the feed line back up to the transmission and leave the return line disconnected so that you can do your soft flush. Alright, so your return line is going to have this hose on it going back down into a bucket so you can see. And what you do is just do cycles of fill the transmission, and then fire it up and then let it pump fluid through, and you see the nasty fluid coming out. Keep doing cycles of that until you see clean new fluid come out, and then bang, your transmission flush is complete. Put your return line back in and fill your transmission to specified recommendation level, and that's it. Alright, then we get to find out if this thing pumps and make sure we have our correct line hooked up to the drain bucket. Turn that off, turn that off. Alright, and hopefully we'll be able to start and have no problems there. Showed to be in park. Let's see what happens. Hey, fires right up. Now we watch. Should start pumping. Should start pumping. Any minute now. Why aren't we pumping? There we go. Now we're starting to get some fluid. Come on. There we go. Come on, pump, pick it up. Check and make sure we're not just dumping it on the floor somewhere. Right, we are filled back up, ready for round 2. Look at that. And that's it, we're clear. Now we lift her back up, reconnect that return line, finish filling it up, and that's it. Test it, we're done. See what just hit there. Freaking front corner lock just freaking flipped down on me. Up we go, up we go. Why does that fucker keep falling? That little puck that's swinging over there, like it's getting caught. But these are the locks that keep the dang lift from sinking down and falling on you. Should the hydraulics or cable snap, anything like that happen. All right, we're up. Now we're gonna hook up that line and fill her up and we're done. All right, transmission swap seems to be successful. The filter and fluid service was successful, and she pulled herself off the lift under her own power. How about that? Now we're gonna go take her for a test drive and see what the fuck happens. Give myself a little more room here. Backs up on its own without having to touch the pedal. That's a good sign. Crawls forward on its own without having to touch the pedal. It don't lurch. Actually grabs pretty fucking good. Oh man. Yeah, I like how that feels. No. Safety. Take her out towards Blue Ridge a little bit. Well, no. Let's go back towards town just in case. That way we're closer to help if somebody, or if we need it from somebody. Good shift. Good shift. Good overdrive drop. Good fucking deal. We were rolling.